Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, what could be a huge and terrifying national conspiracy or a series of terrible mistakes by psychotherapists? Why are hundreds of Americans recalling ritual abuse with mysterious satanic themes? Plus, not every American calls the 4th Independence Day. Hear how one leading Native American is trying to get his people their due, including credit for shaping the U.S. Constitution. Now, here's Pat Mitchell sitting in for Larry King.
Good evening. Much of what you will hear tonight is just plain horrifying. Satanism, human sacrifice, sexual torture, and other stories bizarre and unfathomable. But the question sparking major debate in psychiatric circles is whether it's real. It is ritual abuse, Satan worship. Thousands of people going public with ghoulish and perverse tales, usually from their childhood. Now, if satanic abuse is really happening, why is it so hard to prove? And if it isn't, why would people make it up? Or is it the result of overzealous therapists and unstable subjects? We'll talk to specialists on every side. But first, meet Susan Brzezinski. She says she survived a Nazi-like group that included her parents and grandparents, relations and friends. Welcome, Susan.
Hi.
I know this is not easy. It's a very difficult subject to talk about, and particularly in such a public arena. But could you help us understand what ritual abuse is, what a ritual abuse survivor has survived, by recalling your childhood?
Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to say a little bit that, you know, I kind of look at this in the context of what sadistic abuse is, and that the essence of what was going on for me as a child is that people were addicted to violence, and people were addicted to getting pleasure, got pleasure out of hurting and killing people. And that's kind of at the heart of what I experienced as a child, and they did it in groups.
You experienced murder as a child?
I would have to say hundreds of people. Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of people murdered, Susan?
Mm-hmm.
This is, as you must understand, terrifically hard for people to believe. And you suppressed it, obviously, for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start to recall such a horrifying experience?
Well, I've been working on memories for about 4.5 years. I worked on sexual abuse memories before that, and you know, I have to say that my life was recalling this before I had the memories. I was very suicidal, very depressed, constantly had chronic anxiety. You know, I didn't have a sense of any future in my life. I didn't have a sense of roots. I felt very disconnected, and I just remember thinking over and over again, what are my roots? And, you know, so I feel like my life was talking about this before I had memories of it. You know, there was nothing to justify that. I came from a solid Midwestern family. You know, I was born in Wisconsin, and I was, you know, in my mind until the age of 40, you know, I was, you know, came from just a solid Midwestern family.
To the age of 40, you had none of these memories.
Right.
Of this horrifying childhood. But then these symptoms that you mentioned, is this what led you to therapy?
Well, it led me to be continuously searching, and I tried everything. I mean, I tried meditation and past life therapy and body work and Reichian therapy and Tai Chi, and I mean, I tried everything, but my life was still very suicidal, and my life just got worse. And it wasn't until I got memories of what happened and could process that these compulsions and behaviors and symptoms just went away.
Well, how did you get this memory back? What technique?
Well, art has been really important in my process, and I went to an art and movement therapy training out in California, and it was a 5-month residential training. And during that time, we did a series of self-portraits, and my final self-portrait was this huge circular portrait that was 9 feet in diameter. And it was horrifying to me. I got done with this portrait and I said, I don't even want to know the person who did it, and it was me. And I had all these feelings of rage and horror come up in me.
In this portrait were satanic symbols, things that made you think cult? I mean, where did all the connection with the Nazi, as you said, Nazi-like cult, this was in this drawing, this picture?
I had, there were a lot of snakes. It was very dark, and there were knives and blood and, just all these symbols. And I didn't have any idea. I just did it, And it wasn't until later when I started having memories. So I went into therapy after this. And 3 years after I did this, I started getting memories of what was in those pictures. And I didn't have any idea, it was just...
Now, once you started to get the memories, Susan, did you look for collaborating evidence? Did you talk to brothers, sisters, relatives? Did you confront your mother and father?
Well, I confronted my parents about sexual abuse and got just a wall of denial. And I didn't and haven't said anything to them about ritual abuse. I mean, they may be watching, I don't know, and they may be confronted by seeing me on TV. But I was dissociated till the age of 40, and I've asked questions, like there's names of people I have no conscious memory of that I've asked about, and, there's just, I get a blank answer. And so I'm not looking for corroboration there, but I look for corroboration in the fact that we have a society in which organized sadistic violence, child pornography, and all this stuff just goes on,
I'm struck by something, though. You said you have never confronted your parents about ritual abuse, and you are here on national television. It's very possible that they might be listening or watching.
Well, I told my mother I was going to be on national TV. And she said, and I said, I'm going to be on Larry King Live, and, it's a cable station. And she said, oh, what are you going to be on TV for? And I said, oh, about child abuse. And that was the end of the conversation.
So complete denial, but of any kind of abuse in your childhood. And yet, I read somewhere that you described yourself as being on good terms with your parents. So I'm trying to reconcile a picture of a child who says to a mother and a father, an adult child, that as a child you not only abused me, but you participated in ritual murder, ritual horrors beyond description. How can you reconcile saying that to a parent with being on good terms with that parent?
Well, I was in this till the age of 35, so I was also participating in as an adult. Okay?
You were participating.
Well, I was in this from infancy to 35. I was in a multi-generational cult, and that means, it's kind of like the Catholic Church. Grandpa and grandma's in it, and mom and dad's in it, and the kids are in it, and you're given over to be trained in this. And if you look at it as kind of a combination of a religious and an addictive system. And so, because I was in it into adulthood, that gives me a little different perspective.
Well, and you don't remember what happened up to 35? This memory all became recalled in the last 10 years?
It became recalled in the last 4.5 years.
Last 4.5 years. Why do you think that we have such difficulty accepting that any stories like this can be true? And I'm using a collective we here, most people.
Well, I think that we're in denial about the intensity of violence in our society, and we don't want to see it. When you think of Jeffrey Dahmer, I mean, how could these people live in this apartment building smelling this weird stuff and not say anything? How could the police send that child back in to be murdered by this man? I mean, I think that that's just, so if I was a little kid and I did try to tell, and I go to my teacher and I say something, and what is the teacher going to say? Well, I'll talk to your mother about that. Great, real helpful.
But there has not been, in your case, any evidence, right? I mean, there claims that you bore children as a teenager. Is there any evidence of any of this?
Well, in my particular case, no. I have a client who got on a plane, went back to the South where she was born, had memories, only in her memories, that there was children and babies buried in the backyard under the tree. That woman went back there. She dug down 3 feet in the dead of night by herself. And in Albuquerque, New Mexico, those child's bones are in the Office of Medical Investigation. You know, so I have personal knowledge of someone who took, you know, made the courageous act to go and dig.
Well, Susan, it's been a courageous act for you to come forward and talk about this tonight, and we're going to continue a discussion which will, in fact, look at a search for collaborative evidence. And it's certainly clear that you are suffering and that you're trying to ease the suffering of others. We appreciate your being here.
Thanks.
We'll be back in just a moment. We're going to meet 2 mental health professionals who are involved with this issue and an FBI agent who spent years looking for physical evidence. This is Larry King Live in Washington. We'll be right back.